So you sell on Amazon and you know on some level that you need to run ads. But how do you do that without wasting money? And for that matter, how do you know when you're ready to run ads in the first place? These are huge questions and more complicated than I know how to answer for you. So that's why I wanted to reach out to an expert. That's where ClearAds comes in. They are an Amazon advertising agency that has been in the business for over 13 years and who have helped thousands of brands succeed. And that's why I have brought on George Meressa, the founder and CEO of ClearAds. Now we're going to cut right to the interview in just a minute, but real quick, my name is Brandon. This video is brought to you by Fulfillrite. We ship orders for e-commerce and crowdfunding. Link down there in the description for more details, and quotes are always free. One last quick note, we edited with a light touch on this interview because we wanted to keep it simple and honest, just like a couple of professionals on a Zoom call. Alright, let's cut to the interview. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the logical question, which is, what are the key parts of a successful Amazon selling strategy?
Then that's a good question. So I think before you even look at ads, you actually need to look at the product. So what is it that your product has that differentiates itself from other products that are being sold on Amazon, right? So that's the first place to go. I think what I've noticed time and time again is not enough time is put into the research and development, and also just constantly taking the feedback that's been given upon your own reviews and your competitor reviews to develop the product further. Because ultimately when you do that, once that product goes from being on Amazon to being sold, that's not the end of the story, right? When, if the customer has a good experience with the product, they might buy again. They might recommend your product to someone else. They might leave you a review. There's so many things. Now, if you have that honed in and working well, everything else will be a piece of cake, right? And we've seen this again and again. We work with a number of brands. They have everything in check. They know exactly what they're doing with the product. You can ask them any question and they'll answer. But when it comes to the ads, it doesn't matter what kind of ads you run. They just perform well to a degree. And then we've seen the opposite of that, where someone sells an item that's just very similar to everyone else, and they stand the test of time for a short period, and then someone else comes in, sells the product a lot cheaper than them, and why buy theirs? And that's the question we have to ask some brands: why should people buy yours? So, I mean, that's the first place to start. And before you even go to any Amazon agency and you say, hey, I want some support. Okay, where is your product? And there's been a number of times when we said to a few brands, what you're trying to sell isn't different to what's out there. What is it that makes yours better? So that's the first bit. Now, there are two other components to bear in mind when you're looking at ads in terms of what makes a successful Amazon selling strategy. So the two main things people should be looking at is the conversion rate. So what's the percentage of people from viewing your product that actually end up buying, right? So the conversion rate is the first. Now, you have to try and ensure that, firstly, within a category average, where do you stand? If your conversion rate is below the category average, right, you need to be working on your listing, your offering, etc., to ensure that it appears above this. Now, you can see this information through brand metrics when you log into your advertising console. It's not a hidden thing. You can see how you compare. That's the first component. The second is when you got a number of keywords that you're trying to rank for, and it's I'm sure you're going to ask some questions around SEO later. What is the average conversion rate for those particular terms that you're achieving when someone clicks on that term onto your product compared to your competitors? So they're the two things. So the conversion rate is one part, and then the velocity of sales. How many sales are you pushing through your ASIN in total per day, right? Now, if you're pushing a few hundred and most of your competitors are pushing a few thousand, it's going to be very difficult for you to overtake them without you having to, really push your spending more. But it all comes down, if you've got the product right, the conversion rate is right, everything else will then sort itself out, and the more you spend, the more you will, the more sales you get.
I think selling the right thing in the first place is just a huge factor that a lot of people kind of skip over because they'll get an idea in their head and they just want to execute it. And I have done this personally as well. Like, this is a totally human thing to do, but it makes perfect sense to start immediately by getting that product right. Because I have seen this over and over again, and maybe you guys have seen this over at ClearAds too. It's a lot easier if you've got the right kind of product where there is existing market demand to do everything else that has to do with marketing after that. The ads, all your content, etc. Because it's actually just going to click with people because it's meeting an existing need. So it seemed like, if anything, do not skip on that research. And it seems like some of the metrics you had mentioned as well, like comparison to category average in terms of conversion, can help you kind of figure out if you're doing that without relying strictly on vibes and other kinds of we'll just call it qualitative feedback from people, just basically getting their opinions.
Oh,
And
my mum told me it's great. Yeah.
That's I think I'm very glad that you mentioned the research part up front, because I think that's just an easy thing to gloss over. And we've got separate videos all about research, simply because that's a whole rabbit hole, and that's pretty complex in its own right. But yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about that I've seen a lot of people talk about is Amazon A+ content, which, as I understand it, is it's all that information that shows up below, like when you scroll down a bit on the page. So how does that factor into sales on Amazon?
Yeah, so A+ content is something that is a must. So you have to get brand registered first, brand registry first, and then once you've got that in place, then you could add really descriptive images and videos underneath your listing that will give the person who lands on that product page just more insights and depth into what you're selling. So in the past, if someone had A+ content, you're like, wow, this company's sharp, they're doing a really good job. Now you don't have A+ content, you're really missing a trick. Now, if you're selling products that require assembly, or they are kind of a supplement of some sort, right? You do need to take advantage of the A+ content to show those who are landing on the page, how do you use the products? What ingredients can you find within the item? And all of this is going to play such a pivotal part in the purchase process. So you want to take advantage of this, because also the more information you can give Amazon in terms of descriptions, videos, etc., the more information it has to play with when it's looking to index you and rank your products on Amazon.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there's only so much information you can really get in the plain text of the description anyway, and a lot of people gloss right over it because it just doesn't look as good as the A+ content. So it seems like that is a good opportunity to just help sell the product. Now, related to that, I hear a lot of people talk about Amazon SEO as well. So first, what do people actually mean when they talk about that? And what are some of the best practices that people can follow?
Yeah, sure. Amazon SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. So this is obviously the end goal for most. And when you're running your ad campaigns, your end goal is to find those terms that are not only profitable, but you get the best conversion rates, and then for you to then organically rank high. So when you make a search on Amazon, at the top of the page, especially on mobile, you have the sponsored featured ads, right? These are the ads you pay for through ads. Just underneath those sponsored ads, right, you have the organic search results, right? And these are the products Amazon deems to be exceptionally relevant for those terms that are being searched. So the end goal is to appear right at the top. And what you'll start to notice as well now is when you make a search on Amazon, you will see the number of units sold per item. And the number one spot organically, even though it's weird on the page because you've got a bunch of sponsored and then the organic spot, receives most of the sales most of the time, right? And that is what happens, right? So there's actually a lot of savvy customers now on Amazon who will look beyond the sponsored ads and they'll go and they'll click on that top organic product, especially if, it's for their child, right? Or it's regarding their health, or there's something they have to put into their body, right? They might just take a little bit more, take these safer measures, right? So now, in terms of best practices, I'm not going to tell you anything shiny, right? There's no back end button you press, right? And it's going to rank everything overnight. This isn't kind of what I'm going to say here, but what I've seen time and time again is the lack of product pages being fleshed out, right? So years ago, people used to keyword stuff, right? They used to they find the most relevant keywords. They used to stuff it within their title, within their description, within their bullet points, and then that will see them rank to some degree, right? Now you have to be smarter because Amazon is taking more of a semantic relevance with your listings, right? So they're looking at, okay, when I look at your title and your description and your bullet points, what products are similar to this, right? And then they conclude, and then they'll rank you for keywords. So once they understand you're selling a plastic water bottle, right? Then they'll find every other variation of plastic water bottle to show you against, right? Now, once your product is then shown on the search results page, if a sale is made in real time, they'll ensure that it's shown more often. And this is where paid ads comes in, right? If you have those products that sell well, you can actually teach Amazon through paid ads. These are what I want to rank for. But the first place to start is your title, your bullet points, and then your description. Now, what you want to do is you want to have a balance of once you understood which keywords are the most relevant, you want to make sure that they're somehow incorporated within these areas, right? But you have to bear in mind a human being is going to read these, and they're the ones who are going to make the purchase, right? And the purchase is the end result, and that's what's going to get you to rank organically better. This isn't like Google. Google is heavily on, the moment someone clicks onto that search result, that's it, right? That's when the relevance, that's when the tracking ends. With Amazon, they see it all the way through to the sale, and actually they have an interest which is aligned to yours because they want you to make the sale because they make more money, right? So that's kind of a big factor into what gets you ranked. Now, I recently read a science paper which actually said Amazon's putting more weight into the content that comes through the reviews and the question and answer section of the product detail page, because it makes sense, right? Because they're going to take more into consideration what other people have put about your product, more so than what you say about your own product, right? So there are a few areas as well. And again, it comes back down, if you've got the product that does well and is, really scratches an itch, right? Then there's a stronger chance that someone's going to leave a review, which then is going to have some content which is going to help you index and rank better, right? The Q&A is another one. So be mindful. If you've got questions being asked, go in and try and answer those questions, right? So SEO, and actually what I haven't mentioned is the keywords in the back end, right? You have an ability to add keywords in the back end. And when we audit accounts that have more than 5 or 10 ASINs, this gets missed. There's a bunch of ASINs that they just, they've got 100 things to worry about and they just don't put any keywords in the back end. Again, you want to give all the information about your products to Amazon for them to decide what to index you for. If you leave areas blank, you're not doing yourself any favors. So the keywords in the back end as well is going to help you with your kind of ranking organically.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I find it especially interesting to hear that reviews and Q&As are starting to play a bigger role in SEO, which it makes sense, right? Amazon wants more objective sources of information, which is probably going to come from people and not the sellers themselves writing these fancy descriptions. And I guess the tech is finally there, especially with large language models most likely playing a role, to just summarize this stuff and actually be able to make something meaningful out of the Q&As and the reviews as they come in, and be able to like kind of summarize the sentiments. That's just very interesting to me, because I would not be surprised if like 5-10 years from now the whole idea of like stuffing keywords is just finally becomes a really dated relic of the way things used to be. People still kind of do it to some extent, and it still kind of works, but it's like it's on its way out for sure. It's just an interesting trend overall. Um, yeah, so I think kind of related to that, it sounds like number one goal is you want to make sure the page converts. That's something that you track. That's something that's going to play a role in what gets listed. And I know images play a huge part of that. So do you have just a few basic tips on what to do for the listing images? I'm not talking about the A+, I'm talking about just those images at the top.
Yeah, so such a good question. Thank you, Brandon, for that, because when it comes to images, you have to just bear in mind that people eat with their eyes, right? Especially on mobile, right? They want to know all the information they can from those images, right? And with images, there's so much more information you can portray without even having to go into the text. So the first thing you should do with images is look at how does my image compare to my competitors. Just do a search, and your aim is to stand out, right? What can you do to make your image stand out? Now, there's been a bunch of our clients that made a few adjustments to their hero image, where they included the packaging with just a bit more information about the product, showing that it's extra large with a label, putting a ribbon in just to show it's a giftable item. These small changes have had a significant impact on the click-through rate, which has just rolled onto everything else, right? So it's as simple as look at your product, search for other people. What are they doing with their product? What else could you do, right? On your images, and then you can test and see, okay, how does this compare? How does this do? The hero image, you obviously have to be very careful because you need to have the white background, but you can include the packaging. Now, if you can include a packaging, you can be creative with what's put in the packaging. Now, one of the big mistakes we see with that as well is the writing can be so small, or you try and put way too much information into it, so it's very hard to read. So you really want to go, okay, what are the problems that this product is going to solve? Don't tell me how great it is. What are the problems that it's going to solve, right? And I really do encourage you, like speak to any experts as well that do images, right? And say, hey, what's your take? Because as a brand owner, when you're constantly looking at the same products, it's going to be very hard for you to take a step back and critique your own images.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably a good rule of thumb really is just to look at what others are selling and what they're doing, especially the ones who are ranking high for keywords that you want to rank on. Because if little things like adding a badge or a ribbon to your image can meaningfully impact sales, if not dramatically, it just seems like one easy thing to take care of. Obviously high quality images, obviously this, obviously that, but like just being able to see what others are doing and kind of imitate it, that I think that makes a lot of sense.
And then can I just add as well, there's
Sure.
a small little hack here. Now, when your images are getting edited, if you put alt text within the images, so if you understand these are the keywords that are relevant, and you put the alt text within Photoshop when it's being created, right? These additional tags will benefit your products organically. And I've heard this being spoken at events, and then the follow-up a few days later, someone's implemented it and they've seen substantial improvements in ranking. So This is just something else to bear in mind.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think a lot of people forget about the metadata and they just upload, untitled1.png, and they kind of forget that that can actually meaningfully impact how things rank online. The file names, alt text, just random technical stuff that nobody really wants to deal with, but
Yeah.
that is important nonetheless.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, bearing that in mind, I want to switch gears over to advertising because we've been talking about organic listings, which is very important. You want to get this stuff right before you go spending money on it in the first place. But when it comes to advertising, obviously there's a bunch to consider. And the cornerstone of pretty much any advertising strategy I've ever worked with on any platform is A/B testing. So, how does that work in Amazon?
A/B testing is something that I've seen a lack of on Amazon compared to other platforms, right? So with Google Ads, because you're able to constantly be split testing different text ads, it's very easy to create a new one and then see how that pans out. And they have a significant impact on the results. But it's hard with images because the moment you change the listing, it's going to impact organic and everything else. So that's the big difference with Amazon. So there are tools like PickFu in Tel Aviv that allow you to split test your images. You want to have an idea of what a concentrated group of people think about the new image, and not because it looks better or looks nicer from your opinion. Like, check it out with the audience and see, and then roll them out. So there are tools that we use internally, like in Tel Aviv and PickFu, that help us then determine what images to use.
PickFu is such an underrated tool, I think. For context, for anybody who's just kind of listening to this, who's never heard of it, basically you can do an ad hoc survey of pretty much anything you want to, I would say, just about any kind of audience you want, at least that uses a website. And for a relatively small amount of money, you can get some solid quantitative marketing data. And I don't know of any tool like it that existed before. I'm sure it was out there, but I had encountered this for the first time like a year or two ago, and it's a big deal if you know how to use it. Um, so yeah, I think now more broadly, what are the basic things you want to get right in terms of Amazon ad strategy overall?
Okay, so I think don't get too if you're starting off, don't get too excited by the different types of ads and start building everything everywhere. Like, this is the basics, and this is the stuff that we see go wrong more than anything else, right? And this isn't anything exciting. What I'm talking about, Brandon, is so boring, right? But it's the stuff that I see go wrong all the time. The first place is the naming convention, right? Having a naming convention so you can easily identify what kind of campaigns you've created with what goals, right? Really having that clear for you to understand and for your team to understand, and if you're working for an agency, for the agency to understand, right? You want to make sure everything's in sync, right? So is it an auto campaign? Okay, great. If you have a few ASINs, okay, what type of auto campaign is it? Is it a close match? Is it a substitute match? Is it a complementary type? What type? And then you can actually have them in separate campaigns, right? And then you're going to have some campaigns that are focused primarily on being profitable, right? You want these campaigns to be profitable. You want the ACOS to be a certain level, right? Then you're going to have other campaigns where profit isn't the main goal and you want to organically rank for those keywords. And actually, when you rank well for those keywords organically, you get more sales in total, right? So they're going to be ranking campaigns, right? So you want to have them all named, right? And again, like, you don't want to have 20, 30, 50 keywords all in one, right? So many years back, you could have a few hundred keywords in one account, right? In one campaign. But now what will happen is, and what you'll notice is, if you go into any of your campaigns that have more than 20 keywords, most of them won't get impressions. There'll be one or two keywords that get most of the impressions, most of the clicks, and everything else won't do anything. They won't do nothing. So you want to make sure you structure it out. Now, if you've got a big job of restructuring your campaigns, what I'd recommend is the ones that are performing the best, leave them in those campaigns and then take everything out. You don't want to take out your best ones to build them in something else because they're already running and they're already converting. You don't want to start that process again, right? Amazon already knows certain campaigns and their performance. So leave them and then build outside. That's the first place, right? And then what you want to do is you want to build out sponsored product ads. So what we find is around 70% of most campaigns have sponsored product ads running, right? Then about 20% sponsored brand and then 10% sponsored display, right? So sponsored ads, sponsored product ads is the kind of the bedrock, right? This is the place, this is where you want to kind of set the foundations and make sure that they're working first before you go into sponsored brand and before you go into sponsored display.
So it sounds like that kind of answers one of my next questions as well, which is like common mistakes that people make. And it seems like one of them is just getting way too deep into the complicated parts of Amazon without getting the fundamentals right. Just like target a handful of keywords, structure those campaigns in a simple way with a proper naming convention, and just like really, really, really focus on the basics so that you can understand what you're doing and make changes accordingly.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, and then so what I would recommend as well is use the auto campaigns and the broad match targeting campaigns as fishing campaigns, right? Okay. You're just fishing. You just really want to understand, okay, what are the terms out there that I haven't targeted that are relevant to what I sell, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you see 3 or 4 sales come through certain types of search terms, which could be a keyword, it could be an ASIN, right? Yeah. Then you want to take that out of the auto campaign on the manual campaign and you want to put an exact match, right? And then you want to exclude it from the auto campaigns, right? I'm really just breaking it down into very basic, like digestible chunks here, right? Mm-hmm. Just so people can actually go away and do something about this, right? So that's the main goal of the auto and the broad match campaigns. They should be constrained. They should not be given free rein. Right? Mm-hmm. There's only so much that they can do in terms of generating sales. Most of the sales shouldn't be coming through these campaigns, right? Mm-hmm. They're just more of a fishing exercise. Now, when you have certain exact match campaigns that are converting really well, and if they're profitable, which is even a double whammy, mm-hmm. why limit their campaign budget? Why? If you have inventory, if the product is selling well, right, then, you know, if you're spending around $50 a day, put $100 on there, mm-hmm. right? Allow there to be a higher ceiling because there may be some days where there's going to be an influx of traffic. You don't want to limit them, mm-hmm. right? And then at that point, when you've got those exact match campaigns that you know work really well, they convert well, then you want to also optimize placement bids, right? Mm-hmm. How much of their sales comes when they're at the top of search? Because most of the time, that's where the juice is. That's where the money's made, right? If that's making the sales, right, let's increase the amount that they appear on those positions. And that's where you're going to see the biggest incremental growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So this kind of touches a little bit on bidding strategy as well. Is there anything in particular people need to know about how to handle bidding strategy?
Yeah, so when you're going outside of 2 or 3 ASINs, you need to then get a tool. You really need to get a tool. And I could recommend a few that we've used. We've used most that's out there, most of the popular ones, or we've audited accounts that have terrible tools, which I won't name, and then we'll just get them off those tools. So there's a few really good starting point tools, right? So one of them is Scale Insights, right? And what you could do, so Amazon has some of these rules in place now, but they only allow you to increase. They don't allow you to decrease. And what you want to do is you want to have rules such as if a particular keyword gets more than, let's just say, 15 clicks with 0 sales, pause it. You should not be going in and trying to find that stuff out yourself, especially when you have more than a bunch of ASINs and you're doing quite a lot. If a keyword has 4 sales and has a high X conversion rate, increase the bid by 10%. And these are just a few rules that I'm kind of naming, and you can layer these rules. You can have a whole bunch of these rules, right? And you want to place them in there because whatever is doing well, increase. Whatever is doing badly, decrease, right? And you should have these fundamental bidding strategies in place across all of your account, and then allow them to run. And then there's going to be certain types of campaigns that have certain controlled bids as well.
Mm-hmm. So in order to track success, conversion rate is obviously a big part of this. What else would you keep an eye on?
Okay, that's a very good question. So I'm going to give you some answers that you don't commonly see within the ad console, right? So you've got the conversion rate, and it's not made clear like on the campaign dashboard what the conversion rate is. You've got to dig in to figure that out. Another big one is market share, right? Okay, so sales are down. Why? Right? Is it because the volume of people searching has gone down, which has resulted in sales going down? Or is it because there's a few competitors out there that have basically come in, right, from even nowhere, or they've really optimized their listings and their offering, and they're starting to eat sales that would have been yours? They're the questions you got to ask. And then to flip it, if you've seen a 15% increase in sales, but the market has grown by 25%, you're not doing as well as you think you're doing. You haven't grown enough with what the market's showing. You haven't scaled enough. And that's another big piece that people should be looking at, is the market share. How do we compare compared to the market?
Yeah, I think that's a big one, because it is easy to ride a market trend and kind of pat yourself on the back and think that you've just absolutely got it. But it's like you said, if the market demand doubles and you have a 50% increase and not a 100% increase, you're probably missing out on some opportunities there.
Yeah, and this is one of the biggest points that we get now more than ever, Brandon. It's the fact that people are saying, hey, I'm not growing like I used to grow. And it's like, hey, look at the market. Mm-hmm. Amazon isn't growing as it used to grow, right? And I think there's a number of brands that are expecting to see the same types of growth they saw during the pandemic, the aftermath after the pandemic, right? You're not likely to see that, right, through just the general campaigns that you create. The only real way you can grow in certain categories is if you eat into other people's market share.
And that's a totally different kind of game than just like making it the first time around.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I got one last question for you at this point, which is what final advice would you give to Amazon sellers?
Yeah, sure. So I think the one thing that we haven't spoken about, Brandon, is the search query performance report. So this is a very, very powerful tool. This is the number one reason why you should get brand registered, right? Because with the search query report, you can actually see, right, how much money is being made, how many units are being ordered, how many add to carts there are through every single keyword that you have, right? So there's no more guesswork. Once you've got this information, you can not only know the relevant keywords, but you can understand, okay, this is how many sales come in. So if you got keyword 1 and keyword 2, keyword 1 generates 1,500 sales a month, and keyword 2 generates 22,000 sales a month, right? Then you can understand, okay, obviously keyword 2 has higher growth potential. So how can I try and get, even if I was to get a 5% market share on that keyword, there's more potential. And also on the flip side, rather than going for those obvious 20,000 sales a month keywords, you might be able to find 100, 1,000 a month sale keywords, right? And some of which most of which will be overlooked by the everyday seller, right? So if you do the extra work and you find these additional keywords that are really relevant, hyper-focused, and there's not much being put into them, you can extract that information, you can put it into your campaigns, carefully have a careful naming convention in place so you can really easily find them, and then out of the 100, maybe 15 work out really well and sell really well. Then you
This
can
sounds
ramp
a
them
lot
up.
like Google's keyword planner. This sounds like a really similar tool.
This is way more advanced because this actually
Yeah.
tells you how many sales and how many add to carts there
Okay,
are
you're
with
right.
those
It is
keywords.
much more advanced then.
Yeah, and there's things that I like, it goes past me, but my team do, where they can actually calculate, okay, to kind of on a launch process to kind of organically rank and position for particular keywords. They have an actual step-by-step plan of what keywords to target, taking all this information and taking in search volume and add to carts mainly to really go, okay, if we do this, we can see this kind of improvement in ranking.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I imagine that's a really powerful tool in the hands of the right people who know what to do with that data.
That is hands down the most powerful feature Amazon has ever given any e-commerce brand. And then the second thing, which is really exciting, is Amazon Marketing Cloud and the abilities to target those who have purchased from you before, the ability to understand where the new to brand customers are coming from. Amazon are now about to allow you to see the full attribution model. So not only seeing, okay, which ad was responsible for the sale from a last click perspective, but what other ads have also had a contributing factor to that sale. So you don't start to kill certain parts of your campaigns because you think they don't convert, but actually they had a pivotal role to getting those users to introduce to your brand.
Yeah, that's another really cool feature. I think a lot of people could do something with for sure. It's definitely something that people should dig into a little more. I'll probably include that in the links down below as a resource, simply so people will have an easier time finding that. All right, well, yeah, I think that's all the questions I've got for now. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I just thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being
absolutely.
here. I hope everyone found this useful. I tried to kind of make it as kind of simple as possible, just to understand what sometimes these things can be made so complicated and unnecessarily complicated. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad to have you on. I know that I really appreciate this. I think that folks listening to this are going to really appreciate it too, because this stuff is mysterious and there's a lot of money involved, a lot of emotions involved, and just having somebody who can just talk you through this strategy helps a lot.
Yeah, and one last thing I would want to kind of leave people with, because it's always probably the last thing you remember most, is if you're spending a few thousand a month on advertising, don't be afraid to just cut back a little bit of that to improve one of your listings and get a professional in to revamp it, because that one-time investment can see a knock-on effect for months and months, maybe even years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only other thing I'll add here is that if you need help with managing Amazon ads, I'm dropping a link down to ClearAds below in the description, which you can check out. And similarly, if you need help with order fulfillment, you're not going through Amazon's FBA program, that's something that Fulfillrite can help out with as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is true for Brandon. I've spoken to Brandon a number of times in this past few months, and if you just want to chat with someone, if it's about fulfillment, just call Brandon and he'll be able to chat to you. And if you want to just chat about Amazon PPC, it's not necessarily, hey, jump on and we'll sign you up, but it's more, hey, what do you need? Like, where are there gaps in what you're doing? How can we help? If we can do that for free, we will, right? And we'll try and help as much as possible. So feel free to reach out just to have a chat. If there's anything that was mentioned on this call as well that you want me to really go into a bit more detail, just provide you some feedback with your account in terms of how you can do this better, happy to do it. Because if you can do it by yourself and we can help you, like, we'd love to.
Thanks for watching this interview. I appreciate it, and I know that George does too. Details on both of our companies are down there in the description. And just in case you missed the name, my name is Brandon, here on behalf of Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping for your e-commerce or crowdfunding company, go to fulfillrite.com and request a quote. We've shipped for thousands of companies just like yours, and we'd be happy to help you too. The quote doesn't cost a thing, so if nothing else, you just get some good information on pricing. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and don't forget to slap some postage on that bell so that we can express ship new videos to you as soon as they drop. And last but not least, if you have any questions, leave a comment below and I will personally answer as many as I can. Thanks for watching.